swallowing babies has never looked so good. That's right, boys. We're finally talking about the changeling from the viewpoint of the mating manual. The first thing that we need to recognize is that changelings do not reproduce through traditional sexual means. There are only two ways in order to get a changeling baby. The first one is when a male or female changeling goes out, steals a baby somewhere, and then presents it to a female who will then swallow the baby. But when I say they swallow the baby, I don't mean that they just put the baby in their stomach. In fact, here's the airway, here's the food, and then here is the third track to the reproductive system that whenever they're getting ready to swallow babies or the cabans, that will open up and lead them to the actual reproductive system. And I can hear some of you saying like, wow, that is horrific, but you know, at least the baby's not in pain. Well, you'd be wrong because the baby's alive through this entire process. And in fact, if you noticed back in the Eternal, there was an airway there. So this baby is literally being kept alive, but is paralyzed. And then over the course of several weeks, its skin and eyes will vanish. And then its skin and bones will start to break down, with the exception of the skull and brain. Keep in mind, the baby is alive. And then finally, the skull will reform around the brain and then complete its transformation into a caban. And so you may be thinking, what's up with these little things here? These are known as cabats. They don't actually form immediately after the caban is created. That's actually a little bit later in the process. And all this happens in the turvant organ. The turvant basically, once it's transformed the baby into a caban, then it will go and actually sit in the tail. And that's where the caban will actually start to form embryos on the caban. And these embryos are changeling eggs. And unfortunately, the baby is still technically alive and sentient and aware during these phases. But once a changeling embryo is ready to go, which is called a cabat, then it will actually fall off the caban, go down to the end of the tail, and for eggs, it will actually go up the alpha tract, back into the cervix, and then it'll basically start to develop into a full-fledged baby. But once the caban has fully emptied all the embryos out and it has no purpose left to serve, it will actually get broken down, at which point the baby is put to rest. It'll go down, out the end of the tail, through the beta tract, and out the boop chute. But the other method for a changeling to reproduce is by gifting a female what is known as a cabat. The same thing that grows in a caban, but through a much longer process. So what changelings will usually do, and these are usually the males, it can be a female to do this, but usually males will go out into the world, find a disgruntled couple, disguise themselves as a man, woo the wife or girlfriend, and then, you know, get to fun time with them and just lightly